This was me a couple weeks ago, scrolling on my phone, watching YouTube and mindlessly consuming content. Seemingly in a never-ending cycle of just scrolling, realizing that I've done absolutely nothing over the last couple hours, and then before I know it, I'm back to scrolling on my phone. I know how frustrating it can feel to be in these mental ruts. At least for me, there isn't one just actionable step you can take to get over this overstimulation. I mean, I think we all know the obvious solutions are to meditate, journal, and delete all these apps off your phone and take care of your mindfulness. And to a certain extent, these are the most effective solutions long term, but most people just aren't consistent with them. I know I'm not, and before I know it, I'm back to square one again. So here are the practices that actually work for me because they are way easier to stay consistent with and provide more to you than just mindfulness. Look, the reality is that staring at a screen is really easy, and life is uncomfortable. Now, whether that's grinding out a calculus problem, or having a difficult conversation with your boss, or even talking to a stranger, these things aren't easy. And so I believe that there has to be this innate fire within you that constantly reminds you that you are better than this, and that there are much more fulfilling or productive things that you could be doing. And so once you build that passion for your purpose, the discipline to do the discomfortable things that need to be done, and the self-awareness to know when you're procrastinating or you're facing something bigger, you build the right mindset and you become far closer to getting over your overstimulation rut. I think the underappreciated value of the 9-to-5 and school is that they provide structure in our lives. Structure in which we have to do certain things at certain times, or, we get fired, or people get mad at us, or whatever. And because we don't really usually have a choice in this, it takes a lot of the indecision and the distraction out of our lives. Especially when you wake up early, you go to the gym, or you take a cold shower, you build up mental wins and you build up momentum with your day. And momentum is huge. It's the reason sports clubs win titles and businesses take off. You get on a streak of wins and suddenly it becomes easier and easier to win. So use momentum to get yourself doing the right things from the start of the day, every day, and to prevent yourself from getting stuck or staying stuck in a mental rut. Step 2 is to find flow in your life. And now this can apply to doing deep work or just simply getting lost in the enjoyment of doing your hobbies. But essentially, the idea is to do work or a hobby for long enough that you get lost in the process and you don't even think about the time passing you by. And this is obviously much more difficult with deep work if you are especially prone to procrastinating, which, let's face it, most of us are. But at least for me, when I really force myself to concentrate on something, then it gets easier and easier to focus on that thing, and eventually I actually get it done. And I feel like that's because I've eventually reached this flow state where I broke past that barrier of discomfort and not knowing how to do something. And once I broke the barrier, it was actually much easier to get the work done. In a world where we can go the entire day without having to leave the house, I think we've all become so detached from the feeling of being alive. We are so stuck in our heads that we forget that we have a physical body. I think that's why, me personally, I've been drawn to hobbies and personal experiences where I get that adrenaline rush and I get that sense of pain and hurt. And I know that sounds weird and a little bit morbid, but I feel like when we get hurt, we're reminded of our mortality and the fact that our time on this earth is actually quite limited. I think we definitely can sometimes use that mental kind of kick in the ass that we shouldn't waste our time scrolling on our phones or just watching TV all day. It's much easier for us to get complacent and sit around and observe the lives of fictional characters or others on social media that appear to have way cooler or better lives than us. But I think it makes us forget that A, no one's life is really that perfect, and B, you have the potential to make your life just as adventurous, just as interesting, and just as fulfilling as anyone that you see or know. And I know that's a lot easier said than done, but I think that actually taking small steps towards making your life the way you want it to be is actually not that hard. First of all, you have to figure out what is this ideal version of your life and yourself that would make you most fulfilled. And then secondly, you can create what most people call a bucket list, or just a list of things that you want to do or try, or that would help you become the person that you want to be. And that they don't have to be, huge things like traveling to every continent or going skydiving. They can always be smaller things like exploring your local community or, learning a new language, or things that you don't need anyone else or money or anything else to start. I think the reality is everyone's situation is different and everyone has a different idea of what an exciting life is. But I think the first step is actually figuring out what that is for yourself. And then the second step is obviously taking small little steps every week to work towards that. We all have so much time on our hands that it's inevitable that we at least spend some of it consuming or basically taking in information from the world however we do it. And I think rather than completely cutting it out and trying to become a monk, the more sustainable option is usually to just try to maintain more control over how you spend your time consuming and the ways in which you consume. For example, I think it's much healthier to, pick up a book on a skill you want to learn, or maybe even some nonfiction, because just reading in general has so many benefits for the mind, or finding a new podcast to listen to while you're driving, or etc., etc. But secondly, I think it's okay to, spend time watching TV or, playing Clash of Clans on your phone, as long as you're deliberate about when you want to do this and the time you spend doing it. I would actually advise against video games and social media, because for a lot of people, it's actually easier to just completely quit those things rather than try and control their consumption, just because the software developers and engineers that make these apps and games are trying to keep you on them as long as possible. So it's just sometimes unrealistic to try to create a healthier usage with video games and social media. But you know what? If it works for you, it works for you. I don't know. I think we all know that overstimulation and smartphone addiction is a big problem in today's world. I recently did a challenge where I aimed to fix my own smartphone addiction, and I actually found some tactics quite useful. So if you want to watch that video, I'll link it somewhere over here maybe. But otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching. Now get off the internet.